Thunder, and this is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Last week, we began our discussion about how to develop a good reputation with yourself. And it's a review of a clip that we located on Lewis Howes' clip channel. And so it's about a 12-minute clip. And Ike and I, it seems like about a 6-minute clip is about what it takes to fill up an hour and a half. And so this is the second part of that. So make sure you go back and check out the first part. The first part, of course, was on Ike's channel. I'll try to remember to link the first video in the description to this video. But make sure you go and check that out. And we covered quite a bit of ground, and it's all about confidence, the psychological tricks to build confidence. And this was a clip out of a Lewis Howes interview with Ed Mylett. So, without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get ish done. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, man?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Yeah, I think For some reason, the camera just turned off. I'll probably I'll check it out. But I am doing well. How are you?
And just as I was complimenting how the internet, your African internet was not that dusty.
Yeah,
So anyhow,
it's
um, so well, okay, yeah, there we go. There's your camera. But
okay.
what was I was gonna say? And so this is I am making a couple changes to my social media, and I am attempting to separate some content. I'm attempting to
Okay.
separate the music content from the convo content. So,
Okay.
um, all the live streaming stuff like that. So, I have renamed this channel Dr. Thunder Convo. Dr. Thunder
Mm-hmm.
Convo. And my other channel, which was actually called Dr. Thunder Convo, is now Dr. Thunder Music. So this is now Thunder Convo, and I'm going to be taking a lot of the content, uh, older content and stuff that's been behind a paywall on this channel, and I'm going to be re-uploading it to Dr. Thunder Music, to the new Dr. Thunder Music channel, so folks will have an opportunity to check out some content, at least momentarily, until that channel is monetized.
How about
Um,
conversations about music?
yeah, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of the interviews that I've done with musicians, that stuff will be over there. Any of the
Okay.
educational stuff will be over there. Live performances, lectures, all of that stuff will be over there. Live streams, I will probably be music live streams. I'll probably be doing on both channels.
Mm-hmm.
Multi-streaming both channels. However, the plan, the idea is to try to get that channel monetized, and then to sort of make a more of a separation of the content. I think that might be a better way to go, because I'm looking at the numbers of everything that's non-conversational, and that stuff just doesn't get nearly as many views. People want to hear me talk more on this channel, and so I'm going to go ahead and oblige that, and put more of the music stuff on the other channel. So that's the idea. I'll still have some content that combines both, but as the general rule, that'll be the way that this goes. And I've made some of the same adjustments on my other social media. So TikTok, um, I've got a TikTok Dr. Thunder Music one that'll stay the same. I just created a Dr. Thunder Convo. I don't know if you've been noticing, but Angry Man is blowing up like crazy. And basically, all he did was he started focusing on the shorts, and he grew from about 40 or 50,000 to he's 250,000 now. And this happened over the course of a couple months, really.
Mm.
So he's really, really catching fire right now. So folks got to get those shorts, get the shorts happening. Get the shorts happening. All right. Well, let's go ahead and continue our conversation. I mean, first of all, how's Africa treating you? And where are you in Africa?
I'm in Ghana, Accra, Ghana again.
Okay.
Uh, so it's my usual spot. Well, for those who don't know, that's in West Africa, a couple of
Yeah.
doors down from Nigeria, out here in the coast.
Yeah.
It's the drier season towards the end of the year, so it's not as humid. So it's very similar to California weather at this time. Still a little bit more humid than California, but
Yeah.
the rest of the year it's very humid and hot. So which kind of sucks in terms of. I mean, you can stay indoors all day and have the AC on, but the moment you step outside, even at night, it's just like boom, it just hits you. Like for those of you who might be used to that kind of thing, like if you're in Texas or something like that. But So far so good. Can't complain.
All right, man. Let's go ahead and continue our conversation. You want to give us um, a sort of a brief summation and getting us up to where we are now, and then we can continue.
I think that in addition to what you mentioned, which is you mentioned the fact that this is about psychological tricks for building confidence, one of the most important aspects there is building that reputation with yourself, meaning you have a good track record with yourself. You do the things that you said you're going to do. And then he gets into the training of your mind to see the things that are going to lead you to the places you want to go. And he uses the example of if you buy a Tesla, you see a Tesla everywhere. You buy a Volkswagen, you start seeing a Volkswagen everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of know this thing, right? Whereby if someone is thinking, your spouse thinks, you're cheating, and she sees cheating signs everywhere, right? And it's not just some kind of weird airy fairy stuff like she didn't really see cheating signs. It's just the brain will find all the things that you otherwise would ignore in order to buttress, or shall we say, it's biased towards gathering evidence to fit a particular narrative. Okay. So the narrative may be, oh, I have a Tesla, so now I'm seeing Teslas everywhere. So if you have this narrative of negativity, a narrative of I can't do it, or things are bad, and all that kind of stuff, then you'll see all that, and then it's hard to navigate because in this world there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's not like you know the path, right? So in a place where you don't know the path, being in a situation where you're distracted by narratives to see all kinds of false paths leading to your destruction, it's not going to help. You want to be in a position where you're seeing the clues in this place where there's no real map. So you set yourself up for success by thinking positively, as you know. I'm going to start sounding like
No,
the secret and all
no.
those other kinds of things, but at least we're given a very clear example of how it works. We all know that thing about seeing the car that you drive everywhere, and it doesn't, it can't.
You
Yeah,
seem to struggle a bit. You seem to struggle a bit with the positive thinking visit. I could see you didn't really want to say that. You were you would have
yeah.
said it any other way if there was another way to say it.
Yeah, just you don't want to sound like a lot of people out there who say things like that and then just leave it at that, right? Because I like to give content to these constructs, right? But the whole thing about the Tesla is if you know that thing about the Tesla, then you also can infer, that it's not just about Teslas, right? It's gonna
Mm.
affect every other frame that you occupy your mind with, right? Every frame will be filled in with data that fits the frame. So if you have and one of the things I said last week is just to look forward, look ahead, like look to the future, or another context is to look outside yourself. Just focus outside yourself. If something inside yourself is a little rotten at that moment, you're a little pissed off, you're a little irritated, you're a little disappointed, whatever it is, look outside yourself, or just look to the future. Start thinking about
Yep.
next month, and that's the difference between success and failure. It's just these little steps. Each quarter of the year when you feel crappy, looking outside of yourself. That's the difference between the person that succeeds and ends the year right, meeting their goals, versus the person that doesn't.
Yep. All right, let's head on over here where the video is. And like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support Black Male Media, support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the Replay Gang, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music. All one word, spell out the word doctor. Let's go ahead and get into it.
The key thing is being able to operate out of this imagination. Why is imagination so important? When you were a child, 3, 4, 5 years old, you were probably happier than you are right now. Why? 2 reasons. A, you were closer to God. You had just been with God more recently. And 2, you operated out of your imagination.
So here's the imagination.
I have no idea why he said the God part. To be honest, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, because I mean, how is he gonna back that up? So a child was closer to God. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? I mean,
Okay,
just
so
we're not to beat that one to death, but go ahead.
okay, so what I think he's getting at is the longer we're alive,
Mm-hmm.
the more programmed we become. So we're less of a sort of blank slate, and we have
Mm-hmm.
less self-imposed limitations. And I didn't really like the way that he put that either, because it seems a little bit too atmospheric. For me, I like something that's a little more um, earthy, more grounded, you know. However, I think there is something to that. I just don't like the way that he framed it.
Yeah. The actual thing I don't like about the framing is the fact that he separated them, because what he mentions next is what you're saying. He says, because he says, one, you're closer to God, and then he says what you says. He says, and then two, you don't have these memories and such and such. In other words, you're not starting to get corrupted, right? If you
Right.
will. But the thing is, he separated them as if like this God thing, which is a separate fact. Like, oh, that is also there. The way I would have liked to frame it is to say, hey, you start getting corrupted and you have these memories, and if you rely on memories as opposed to imagination, blah blah blah. And then at the top, the icing on the cake would be, one could even say that you were closer to God before. You see, I like that. That's a better narrative. It's nicer. It's a better meal than. And you know how I hate the separation thing too, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
one, one this, and then two, and it's like, why did you separate those two? Now I'm just stuck with that first closer to God thing. And if I were ungenerous, right, I would just tune out, right? I'd be like, this guy's full of crap. But anyways,
Well, okay, so now I think you're being generous by suggesting that that is what it is that you said is actually what he means. I think that he means what you're saying, but he also means some weird thing about the
actual, yes,
proximity.
some kind of temporal time. So when you before you born, it's like
Yeah.
it's just like,
So,
and
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so um that is an interesting thing, right? In the sense that uh perhaps we're talking like people that are philosophically trained, and by philosophically trained I mean just trained to be clean with concepts. And there's something rather disconcerting about putting God and some kind of time biological event together, right? Like you get what I'm saying, right? I
Yep.
mean, it's like, oh, closer to God, and then you came out the woman. It's like, I don't think those concepts are very, God is transcendent, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but one might say we're just quibbling, right? But it's not just quibbling, because we are correct in the sense that if you're going to use these words and these concepts, then don't mess them up like this. And one wonders if people really believe that that kind of thing. You know, it's kind of like the birth of because there's a lot of superstition that takes that kind of form, right? It's not like the birth of superstition, this kind of mixing up of these two realms together all the time, like but I agree with you. I think he just did a whole kind of like the kind of thing some grandma would say somewhere, and then you're just like, oh, you you take it with a grain of salt.
Something. Let's keep going.
You didn't operate out of a history and a memory because you didn't have one. And slowly over time, by the time you were 10, 11, 12 years old, loving people installed their limiting thoughts and beliefs, their software into you. Because most things in life are caught, not taught. You catch them.
Wow.
And so now you're starting to operate out of history and memory, and you repeat it, and your RAS begins to see the things that.
Do you think that's true? Do you think that most things are caught and not taught? And maybe can you unpack what you think he is actually saying? What people mean when they say that?
Okay, if we that specific phrase, caught not taught,
Yeah.
I think it's true in the sense that, if you ever observe children, um, they are not waiting for you to teach them anything. I'm talking about really young, right? They start mimicking behaviors, okay, right off the bat. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I think it was Aristotle that observed, but we need not, name drop Aristotle. But Aristotle observed that man is superior in copying to all other animals. That man we copy each other very, very well. As a matter of fact, that is the birth of culture. Not the birth, that is the whole of culture. If you look at culture in a granular level, it's just people copying each other. On a massive scale, you see a culture, but it's people in proximity copying each other. Okay. Going back to the child thing, they start picking things up and wanting to exchange it with other people. Like child picks stuff up and gives it to you because they see adults doing that, right? No one taught them, hey, this is what adults do. They're like, okay, there's something about this kind of exchange which is useful. Okay. And it is useful, by the way, to know how to, interact or transact, right? They see you do some kind of weird thing like this, they do it too. They copy a lot, and people copy a lot. Think about models. Advertising is based on this. Advertising doesn't teach you. Advertising just shows you somebody that you think is a model, like Brad Pitt on a screen drinking some espresso, and you want to copy Brad Pitt. Okay, there was no teaching. Okay, there's no pedagogy going on there, Dr. Thunder, right? It wasn't any kind of. It's just straight up. Here's Brad Pitt. Here's espresso, and boom, people buy espresso. Why they want to copy Brad Pitt? Because Brad Pitt is a model, and we have these. There's these. We have models that are kind of like there's like a pyramid of models. All the way at the top, if you're a Christian, let's say, the top model will be like Jesus. If you're Buddhist, the top model will be Buddha or something similar, right? But all the way down to the Joneses, we have all these models as well. Okay. And one thing to be very aware of, whether it's positively or negatively, is to understand which particular model you're in. Which particular group of models or what you're modeling yourself after, either positively or negatively. Like either you're trying to be like this person or you're not trying to be like this person. And again, all the way down to the people you interact with every day and that you're modeling more granular stuff with. And then there's like mid levels, and then it's like the celebrity level, people you can't touch and stuff like that. And I think that it is very important, and this is a side thing, and we'll probably get into it as we go along here, about knowing which mimetic game you're in, because we're all in some kind of copying thing. So yes, I do think that a lot of this stuff is caught. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So where I start to have a challenge is with because this goes sort of, it's synonymous with, certain things can't be taught. You just have to be sort of around in the environment, and from being in the environment, then that's how it happens. So you can't actually teach it. Either you have it or you don't have it, this kind of thing. Often I have found is that people that say that, they just don't know how to teach a particular thing. And so they buy into it can't be taught when it actually can be taught. It can be taught, but we have to talk about what the process would be to teach it. Is it a sort of lecture style, somebody getting taught it? Or is it a, project-oriented teaching method, or is it a, mentor, more of a mentorship, which is less sort of structured, is it that kind of thing? But I would argue that most things can be taught. It's just that for the most part, people don't know how to teach them or don't know what the process is. So they would rather just find somebody that can already do it. And then that is the reason, and that is sort of the excuse for not sort of developing certain individuals, you know.
That's a good point that you bring up. Now, obviously, it's a leap from what he's saying. So he's saying most things are caught, not taught. And then some people will be saying that people add the can in there, that whether things can be taught or not, right? Which is a different thing, right? But it's in this realm of caught, taught, and such. And then you bring up teaching, right? One of the biggest aspects. Now, I happen to have some facility when it comes to teaching, right? It could be a natural talent or just a kind of knack, or just because autodidact, such as I am, you have to teach yourself. And then if you're teaching yourself, you're going to come up with certain ways of doing it. And if you have a particular intuition for that, one of the things you're going to learn, to add to what you've said, is when someone is ready to be taught, when someone is teachable, coachable, ready to receive or not. And one of the biggest things I find people doing is they try to teach people whom are just not ready, or and that's just like a 0 or 1 thing, where it's like, dude, like they're not ready, okay, or they don't want to learn right now, or they're stubborn, whatever it is. It's just don't do it. And some people don't seem to, they just don't seem to have the eye for that, okay. And then you take it a little further. Let's say they're ready, but you don't really understand the aspect, or most of the times the fundamentals work, right? But some people don't understand what a fundamental thing is, because and I don't want to say that whole what is fundamental to you is not fundamental to me, that kind of, no, there are fundamentals, okay? But some people don't know how to give someone the fundamentals of something, or spend time on the fundamentals of something, finding how this person might be able to grasp the fundamental of something, right? Because I think the fundamentals are important and are necessary, but the way you grasp it is not going to be the way I grasp it. Maybe you have a floodlight, I have a searchlight. Maybe you have a dot matrix printer and I have some other kind of printer. If we're just talking about using the analogy of scanning the fundamentals, right? Some people don't have the patience for, let's stick with the fundamentals, but the way I grasp the fundamental, which for me may be in a very fuzzy way, where, it doesn't have to be very clear. I just kind of get a fuzzy notion of what that thing is intuitively. May not be the way the other person gets it. Maybe they need each border of the perimeter drawn out, right? So, but some people just kind of, either they get impatient or they start going to more higher level things, and and then the thing crumbles down because you didn't give the person a fundamental. So these types of intuitions I find very, because I see a lot of people trying to teach a lot. And my first YouTube channel, Prometheus Engineering, right? That channel was created because after going through engineering school, I find up till today, up till tomorrow, that the fundamentals are, you have a lot of engineers there that don't know the fundamentals of stuff. They may be quote unquote good engineers. They're just good operators. They operate well. They give you the deliverables, right? They put in the right equations into the right box. But what exactly is the fundamental there of that thing? It just so turns out that the way I learn is, if I don't get the fundamental, I don't think I've learned it. I don't like operating that way. It's very cumbersome for me to just have surface level equations, just the surface level, push this button here, and then when this happens, push that button there. It's like, I don't like that stuff. So I like to know exactly what's fundamental so that I can derive all the equations at a moment's notice, right? So I created that channel to go down to the fundamentals. And if the reaction to the channel, because people are still out there leaving comments on a daily basis, depending on which video they're watching, people receive that very well. They're like, I really do like this, I wish I had a teacher like this that, spent time telling me exactly what this fancy word and crazy concept means, right? But so, yeah, I do agree with you. People talk a lot about, not being able to teach, or things not taught, blah, 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 but they miss things psychologically with the other individual, and then they miss things with regards to the conveyance of this particular concept. Anyways.
Yeah, it's interesting, the thing that you're talking about with the fundamentals. um, a signal, a sign that someone has a lot of natural ability is their ability to skip steps, right? They don't know how they're able to do it. They can just do it, right? They didn't, but obviously that's going to be a problem. At some point that's going to limit them. So, one of the more challenging things to do is to convince someone that has a lot of natural ability that they should slow their horses and go back to this stuff that they're probably very bored by, to master those more foundational principles, so then they
How do you
can
think? What do you think about?
actually
Because
advance.
you just said they're bored by it. Okay, so let me try to use you as an example, which I don't know if this applies. So I'm sure there are areas in which you'll find yourself skipping steps, but you know that you got to come back and fill in those bricks. You had better fill in those bricks, right?
Right.
Is that
Well, I
correct?
think that with something like music, it is more abstract, right? So, and I like this analogy between music and language. In language, however, it's more obvious when somebody's talking out the side of their neck or they're just making a bunch of stuff up, right? In music, because of the sort of inherent beauty, you know, um,
Hmm.
you can sort of get away with certain things that are not really conversational. They're not really the right thing to do in that moment. And
Hmm.
especially as improvising musicians, there's more sort of latitude. So is it, I'm making this choice because uh, this is my personality speaking and this is just what I like? Or I'm making this, or are you making this statement because there's some level of deficiency that disallowed you from being able to make the statement you actually wanted to make, right? So there's always that kind of aspect, and I think that is the case with uh, you know all kinds of creative things. You know, there is that, like when you're okay, so I have this thing in my mind, and I want to bring that forth into reality. Right now, am I actually executing with perfection the vision in my head, or am I cutting corners because I lack the the skill or the knowledge or whatever it is to be able to actually execute what the vision is in my head? And at what point do I start saying, "Hey, it's close enough," you know? So so that's that's why the fundamental stuff is so important, because the fundamental stuff will stunt your growth and it'll make those things happen more often, where you're like, hey, well, I just don't really think, I don't really know what this is close enough. Okay. This starts to happen more often. So anyhow.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned music, but also especially if it's performance based. Like if it's a if you're focused on performing the music, then you're more likely to fall into that trap of, right, just you can skip the steps, because after all I did perform it. I mean,
Yeah.
I did it. I played the game, it happened, right? So but I guess when you're more on the pure theory side, and I'm just making silly distinctions here. I'm not a musician, right? But I'm sure on that side, then it will behoove you that you better fill in those bricks. What I find patience for the people
I
whom,
would say that you better fill in those bricks either way. And I would
oh yeah,
argue that
100%, yeah,
performance is theory.
okay, yeah,
It's an
that's what.
expression theory. So, but yeah, go ahead.
What I have no patience for is people who are okay. Let me not make the distinction. I have no patience for people who don't fill in the bricks, right?
Yep.
Um, like, yeah, I get it, you can skip or whatever, but this jumping to conclusions too, and then not being able to go back and solidify things and really have a firm understanding, but thinking that I find it to be psychologically immature. And at some point, are either you're lying to yourself consciously, or you just have a dark alley that you're not looking into, right? Because if you are aware, then you know that there are gaps there. Are you just blocking it out, or are you just you're just so airy fairy, just caught up in the crap of life that you're not filling in the gaps in there. Now, I keep on referencing in and filling in these gaps. So and the reason why I don't have the patience, I would assume, is because my natural thing is to be very introspective and to look in there, in the world of ideas, in the world of concepts, and to just make sure, right? Yes, I may have skipped, and I may be skipping here, but I always know these areas and these gaps that I do have to fill. So much so that when someone tells me something, and it could be like 10 years ago, 20 years ago even, somebody says something that is kind of somewhat incongruent with a working theory I have. Because let's just use the term working theory as that which is not incomplete. Some steps are skipped, but it works. It's a working hypothesis, a working theory. Someone says something and it's like, that's a gap. I hope I remember that thing. I may not fix it today. I may not fix it for 10 years even, but I know that gap is there. And then later, or at some point, I'll find a podcast, or I may stumble upon that information and be like, yeah, this thing that I've been missing, let me read up on it, and then I'll find it, and then boom, it'll be resolved. So being that I'm that way, I just can't stand that crap of people ignoring gaps in their fundaments, if you will.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
That reinforce that history and memory. And so you basically have the same life over and over again with a different cast of characters in a different environment, but the same emotions. You have the same emotional home. My dad used to say to me, every call, bro, till the day he died, and I'm 50 years old, he blah, 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 whatever we're talking about. Last thing he would always say to me, be careful. Be careful. What the heck? And I go,
careful with what?
I don't know. I never knew. But what is that programming from the time you're 8 years old? Be careful. Hey, go to
Watch
school.
out.
Be careful. So with that, it operated out of this fear thing, right? All that, I need to be careful. I need to be careful. But don't make this risk. Don't take that business decision. Don't start a podcast. Don't get on that stage and speak. Don't do this. Don't do that. You say that to an already unconfident, insecure person. He meant it lovingly. By the time I'm 50, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, be careful. He didn't even know.
So the funny thing about this, him being careful likely had something to do with him being worth hundreds of millions of dollars when he was 50 or whatever, right? And so it's interesting how we always I'll say we always sort of, it seems like the natural thing is to bias against an aspect of your upbringing that was actually positive. Like if you had like a lot of structure, then maybe you want to lean in the, the structure thing's good, but you need to have more creativity, and you need to be free, and X, Y, and Z. I find that happens often. It's like people, because they have this perception that there's certain deficiencies that they're not happy with, and so they would rather just jump all the way on the other side of the equation. And I think that's interesting. The other thing I was going to say is, now, of course, he knew his dad, and I'm not putting in anything into this, but be careful doesn't necessarily mean be fearful, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean tippy-toe around eggshells and don't do anything that's exhilarating or, don't do anything that's outside of your comfort zone. It might just mean take adequate precautions to make sure that you protect whatever the resources that you acquire in your family and like this. But obviously he knows his father better than we do. And so he may be saying this based on obviously a lot of other information. So I'm just poking at the be careful thing.
He uses his father a lot in the example. And if I were to just say something about this, typically, if we talk about the fear side, so if indeed the be careful thing is a fear-based thing, it's stuff that you'll typically get more from your mother, right?
Mm.
And and then typically, again, I'm speaking in generalities. As a man, there's not going to be a lot of that going on. I find that, let's say, for example, if you take my daughter, for example, I just naturally will start like, okay, so right now, she's one. So if you put her on a bed, she can't necessarily come down herself, right? But naturally, I'm just like, okay, I put her in the bed in a particular position, like backwards, like you're gonna crawl backwards down from the bed, that kind of a thing. That move, right? It would never occur to her mom to just start doing that, like to just put her over there and then watch her, like, okay, yeah, and then okay, yeah, I'll catch her if she falls, that kind of a thing. That's just my natural tendency, is just to start doing stuff like that, just like to kind of push the boundary a little bit. I'm only saying that because there typically is a balance here. If there's a father and a mother, one will be more on the, your mom is still calling you when you're 60 years old, telling you or how you should be careful and stuff like that. And while your dad should be kind of, saying something else. One thing he said here is that his dad lovingly told him something. Now, I know that love is one of those words that is very complicated. He used the word love also when he was talking about people. He said, people you love fill you with their fears and their blah, blah, blah. And I find that use, it's almost like, and I haven't thought about it. Sometimes I want to find another word for what he means. And there's something that, where people are trying to be affectionate. They're trying because they're close to you, right? There's this closeness, there's a family bond and all that kind of stuff. So they do things, right? But is it love, right? Because again, he's going to use later on love as some kind of a pure thing that always kind of brings good, right? Because people say that, do that. If we just had more love, okay? But how about the more love that is causing you to kill each other, right? Because it is that closeness thing that indeed causes us to kill each other. It is not something else, okay? It is, the love of the fatherland and the motherland, and indeed the mother and apple pie that causes one guy to kill the other guy next in the village over, because the guy in the next village loves his mother and his apple pie, right? So where does this kind of just pure bond? And again, you know what I'm saying? It's my typical thing of trying to separate morality from just this. I have a bond with somebody, and I have a bond with a group of people. So people typically see that as a good thing. There's safety in that. It's cohesion, group cohesion, and there's the psychological safety. All that stuff exists in there. But to just see it as a good as such is not. It's not clean. And then they also use the same word, love, to talk about the good as such, right? And just another philosophical quibble, but lovingly, messing things up for somebody. I wish you could find another way of saying that.
Yeah. So, and we could get into all the different words that get translated into love. There's eros, erotic love. There's phileo love, that's friendship. There's agape love, that's the God love. That's the unconditional love, by the way, right? All of the other kinds of love are conditional. certain conditions have to be met, and if they're not met, then there is no love, right? And you hear Christians frequently talk about commitment. Love is expressed by a commitment, and the commitment shows that there is this love. And there's all these measurements of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's not boastful or, braggadocious. It's selfless. It doesn't celebrate, the trauma, the turmoil of others, all of this, all of these ways that, but usually when people say love in the way that he's saying it, it's notably missing critical, critical context, right? Like, what are you talking about? What kind of love are you talking about? And it's almost intentionally presented in a way so that you don't have to actually get down and get your hands dirty to actually figure out what it is that we're talking about. That's one of the reasons why I don't like people throwing the love word around, because it's I don't know what you mean. Honestly, I don't know what you mean when you say it, because people will say routinely, or even stuff like, I fell in love, I'm falling out of love, I don't love you anymore. I don't know what any of that stuff means. Like, I mean, I know when people say it, but just based on common usage, there's so much contradiction in the ways that people use that word. So I'm like you. I would much prefer for folks to discontinue the use of that until they actually understand what they're talking about, or until they want to actually be precise. But I doubt that that'll ever happen.
If we look at the opposite of what he's saying with regards to the encouragement, so now the opposite of what he's saying is, because he's saying, filling someone with fear and limiting beliefs. We all know that whole spiel. What will be the opposite of that, right? The opposite will be this empowerment, encouragement. You can do anything. That too sounds problematic.
Right. That
such
also
that
is not love.
So I'm biased towards actually it gets very deep very quick, and one needs to kind of get psychological and decipher several types very quickly once you start going to this path of like, well, what would be the best cocktail, the best mix of be careful, watch out for reality out there, there's snakes in the garden, and also, live your best life, if you will. It is I'm not a good example, but I think that perhaps more people need that thing that we just scoffed at, that thing of go out there and get it. It'll never sound good to me. I'll never like it. I never want to hear it. It's never going to sound good to me. Okay.
Yeah.
But if they actually then take action, if it is backed with content, similar to when I started and I said, think positively. And I was like, I didn't want to say it. Right. But if I have the attitude of, hey, think positively, but then I give you content and context. Like, for example, if I just told people, hey, go start a business, right? I know what that sounds like. That sounds like that's for other people. right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like, oh, you're one of those people who starts businesses and you're telling me to go start a business. I'm not one of those people, right? That's the person receiving the message is thinking that now. So the actual content here that is going to encourage the person, it's not just, oh, you can be all you can be, and I'm going to charge you 5 tickets, and you have to, get you into my sales funnel to, for my whole self-improvement courses about telling you that you can be all you can be. The actual content will be to tell you in this particular case, right? And not fully in the case, but just to give an aspect of the case, to tell you that, look, I know what it sounds like. It sounds like, hey, here's one of these people telling me to go start a business. But how about we remove the word business, right? Because that word is already tainted with stuff. We do believe in narratives, and business has a narrative. Business is boring. Business is perhaps, if you go with the whole kind of memory thing that he was talking about, you probably have an idea of what a businessman is, and you probably know a couple of things. Some images come in your mind when I just say the word business, right? And those images are stale, they're dry, they're boring, and it sounds hard. It's not the path, it's the path less traveled. All those things are coming into your mind, right? So the content will be to systematically start deconstructing, using different words and saying what I'm actually talking about is developing this skill and leveraging it in the marketplace in this particular way, such that you get this kind of independence, blah, 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 right? And fill it in that way. Now I've granularized it. I'm saying, no, it's just a skill. You get this particular skill. You're going to get this independence. Oh, no, don't worry about it. It's just a certification that allows you to then charge people independently for your XYZ, right? But if I say, just go start a business, and then I just follow it up with, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, it's not going to go anywhere. So my solution for people will be, my little hybrid cocktail will be, yes, tell them that they can do it, but get into their minds, right? I'm about to say why what I'm saying doesn't work, but that's difficult. Get into their minds. But the thing about it is, I try to do this whole mind thing, as you know, my whole feeling, image, talk, get into exactly what someone is experiencing when I tell them something, like how you just experienced the word business, or how X, and then let's get in there and deconstruct it. I find that people, or let me ask you, Dr. Thunder, why do people not respond to that? Because for me, let me give the context of the question, right? So some people give this very abstract information about what to do, and then they tell you psychologically how things work. And I find that people don't react well to that. People are not going to do it, right? It's like, because all the information, for example, already exists. Like all this what to do and how things work, you could just Google it, but people are not going to do it, right? So I want to then flip it on its head and get down to the what you experience stuff, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that, since you experience it and I experience it, you know what it is, just like the Tesla example, and like we can get into it and do that kind of thing, that people are more likely to act. But it seems like it just becomes like this inversion where it's the same problem, where it becomes too much again. I think by going internal, that it's going to be easier, because we're operating off the same base. You have experiences, I have experiences. Let's talk about how we experience in the world so that we can navigate. But in my experience, it doesn't work. Why do you think it doesn't work? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
So are you asking me, why do I think that the pep talk doesn't work? Or are you asking me? Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that the granular deconstruction of people's experience in order to give them action potential doesn't work? In other words, all that the pep talk is like mid-level, like it's in the middle level, and people seem to like that one. On the high level is, I'm going to give you a deep knowledge of how systems work and what to do and all that kind of stuff. People don't want that either, it seems, for sure. I flip it, and I want to give you a granular level of your experience, as I was saying, for example, with the business thing. I'm like, okay, here's how you experience the word business. Here's what you're feeling right now. And here is how you can sidestep that feeling and then still act. But still, people don't want to do that. right? I'm thinking, hey, I'm telling you what you're experiencing. And they say, yes, oh, yes, when you said that, I do experience that. But they still don't want to act.
Yeah.
It starts becoming too much again for them.
Yeah, I just think people are not going to do anything until they're ready to do it. They're just not going to, and so it's that whole you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can be as eloquent, you can be reading their mail, and it doesn't matter. They're not going to move an inch until they're ready to move. And this is why largely I think that the motivational speaker thing is largely hogwash.
It's a sham.
Yeah. It's largely hogwash. And people want to feel good. They want to be rah rah, sis boom ba, all of that. You can do it and everything. But there's a couple things about it. If the only reason why somebody would actually move an inch is to be is when someone is giving them this pep talk, then what happens when there's no one around to give them a pep talk?
Mm-hmm.
That's a real problem. And then another issue I think is I just don't think that people are going to do anything. It's interesting. So if you say to yourself, you know what, I just need somebody to motivate me. I need somebody. I'm going to go to this conference and they're going to tell me to do X, Y, and Z. Anybody that actually does something after leaving that conference, they would have done it if they went to the conference or not. That's honestly what I think. Right. And maybe that's a pessimistic view, but just based on what I actually see, and even, dealing with students, what it is that the student needs, what it is that they want, the sort of encouragement game and all of that stuff, and the broad range of things that I've tried with students, and even this whole trying to be inspiring and all this kind of stuff. The thing is that people are only going to move when they're ready to move. And so, I mean, try to present the information so you're not boring them out of their mind. But other than that, it's like, I think the rest of it is either you're going to take it and you're going to go get out there and be somebody, or you're just going to waste my time. I mean, those are the options. That's what I see. All right, let's keep going.
He was saying it to me, but what was he doing? He was installing, God bless him, his limiting beliefs into me as a little boy. So a lot of these things that you believe, you were defenseless when you started to believe them. Mm-hmm. They were installed in you by loving people who were around you.
Right.
And even though your life may look differently, your emotional home, the 4, 5, 6 emotions you experience pretty regularly, might be really familiar from your parents, 1 or 2 of them, mm-hmm. right? And so you need to look at your emotional home.
What's your most powerful emotion? And
that was a very vague statement. How many emotions are there? Well, how about this comment that Josh Marango just made? I think it's more about being in the environment and reinforcing the goal/vision. What do you think of that?
Yeah. So, and it goes with so incentives and material conditions being huge incentives for changing of human behavior. Some people say when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing is when people change, right? So, and pain it might not be necessarily pain, but there's something that's got to make them ready to do something, right? And it tends to be what we tend to call like material. I'm saying material as a replacement for the environment now. So the conditions of their relationships, their friendships, and a lot of times it's economic, right? When that bank account gets to negative, all of a sudden they're gonna skill up, and all of a sudden they're gonna start that business, right? All that time when I was talking about business, it sounded like Greek, but when they find themselves in a bad situation, all of a sudden I don't even need to say anything, right? Because
Right.
they can't help but to move in the direction of opportunity and financial freedom or whatever it may be. So 100%. Creating those environments, I think is key. And it goes back to that whole, we're discussing kind of teaching pedagogy earlier. And one of the things that I learned or that I know, let me extend the whole patience point I was making. I was talking about the patience of fundamentals, or teaching people fundamentals. Some people don't have the patience to, especially in non-formal settings. Let's say it's a family, right? You're raising, or it's a friendship, or, some kind of trans-temporal relationship thing where you're not teaching somebody to take a test next week, okay? A lot of people are not patient with just letting the environment coax somebody lightly while you remind them of the lessons that they should be learning from said coaxing by the environment, right? A lot of people want to impart the logic of things. There's a heavy reliance on logic by certain types of people, where they're like, I'm gonna hit you over the head with the logic of why your decisions are not wise right now. Logic, 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 logic. The logic is there. It's not going away, right? It's there. But you have to understand that. I just don't understand the lack of patience, right, with, just because the logic is there doesn't mean that the person is psychologically ready to even, maybe they're learning the thing, but they don't want to tell you that they're learning it. Let's say it's your spouse, for example, right? And they might not be ready to admit that, you were right. But it's not the end of the world. They might get there on Wednesday. And depending on, again, it's all about cadence, right? And flows, right? If people have different kind of cadences and stuff like that. What?
All right. Look. So this is the way I think about this. You yourself, in the way that you receive correction, receive information, we want to be so able to receive under duress, under the worst possible scenario, right? Because you can't control how the information is conveyed to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is not possible. It's not possible to convey the information. I'm sorry, to control the way the information is transmitted. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's that's just how it is. So if you require a certain a certain delivery, a certain approach, if your ears are itching, if that's what it must be, then you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff. It just ain't going to happen. Okay. Now on the giving side, is you're transmitting the information, then that's when I think what it is that you're saying is most valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the teaching side, yeah, you have to be patient. You have to understand that people, they're not always ready to get the information, X, Y, and Z. What I don't like is the person that's supposed to be learning trying to use excuses of, well, I wasn't quite ready to learn it yet, and I just need them to be more patient with me. You don't get that. You don't get to choose that. You're wasting time now. You're wasting your opportunity to learn because you heard some person saying, we just have to be more patient with our students. And so now you think that your teacher is supposed to be more patient with you. BS. You're lucky
Mm-hmm.
if the teacher is more patient with you. And the fact
Mm-hmm.
is like you said, it's that, and we talked about this before. It's the hellfire motivation. It's like for some reason we don't have any problem when the flames get a little close and you really start feeling the heat. Somehow, so for some reason, we don't have any problem straightening up and flying right. But until those hellfire flames,
Yeah.
until the temperature rises past that comfortable temperature, that's when we're going to actually do something. Which is, it's too bad that people are like that. It's too bad that that's the case. And you can just imagine how much time people are wasting waiting for the hellfire to appear. But I will promise you, especially if you're a man, hellfire's coming. And homelessness is a real threat. It wouldn't take, look, I could be homeless in less than 2 months. Easy. So could almost any man. It doesn't matter how successful, how much stuff you've accumulated. Homelessness is right there. It is threatening, and if you realize it or not, you're like about 1 or 2 mistakes from homelessness. And I don't know, perhaps that's actually what his father was actually trying to tell him. Beware of the hellfire.
Yeah, be careful. Be careful. Yes, 100%. Number one, informal settings, right? That's why I said, like, informal settings, you can't be doing this whole preference thing and patience thing. And then number two, it's more of the teacher I'm speaking of.
Right,
Obviously,
of
you want to train yourself to be able to get the message from
Right.
any. Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that is not what people do now. And an unfortunate consequence of all this self-help stuff and all of that is that people in like love languages and all this, now they think that you're supposed to cater to them. See, I didn't receive it because it wasn't my love language. And look, I'm not saying that we should, as the person attempting to give, that we shouldn't be aware of that. I'm just saying it's a sign of weakness. It is a sign of immaturity. That's what I want to say. It's a sign of immaturity that you can only receive certain messaging or certain messages in particular ways given a particular timing. That is a sign of immaturity. It's not something that we should celebrate. It's not something, honestly, in a matter of speaking, it might not be something that you want to admit to people.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Don't be
For
proud
sure.
of it. What the heck?
No, for sure.
You jive
You see,
turkey.
there's something about these I'm gonna go all the way back to Martin Luther. Not necessarily him, but that whole movement of opening up the world of letters to the masses. Because what you just said about this love languages stuff, it's just the latest example of that, right? Where this is the latest thing that's been written down somewhere, and this is how people are going to be jabbering their jaw about it. I'm about to say something that is rather elitist. It's elitist. It is hierarchical, as you know I like, right? That these understandings are not for everybody. In other words, there is such a thing as knowing thyself, right? But the love languages version of it and how it gets bastardized is we're worse off for it. It's better to keep those motherfuckers. Better keep them ignorant. Okay, so would go a particular extreme version of this. That better that they're ignorant than to open up the books for them so that they can just start throwing excuses at you and all kinds of crap at you. Like, oh, this book said this and this book said that. It's like, dude, these freaking plebs out here, man, don't deserve this information. Okay, and that's that.
That's great. Okay, I'll say it a little bit more diplomatically. Okay, so the Bible was intended for the use by the church to teach the people. Now the Bible has been taken outside of its natural habitat, out of the context that it was given in, and then used in all manner of bogus ways to teach all kinds of stuff that is completely antithetical to its purpose. And that's what's happening with all these concepts too.
Mm-hmm.
This self-help mumbo jumbo, motivational. I just need a teacher to inspire me. That other teacher that I had, he just didn't inspire me. You jive turkey. He didn't inspire you. That is not their freaking responsibility. If you're not inspired by hearing knowledge, by hearing stuff that can actually help you to improve and grow, that ain't the teacher's responsibility. That's 100% you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Must
go.
be frustrating. And one thinks of STEM and why it's still very male dominated, right? And one you see everything I'm already saying, right?
Right.
Because in STEM, you really can't really be doing all this crap, like you can't be waiting for inspiration or whatever the hell it is. You're gonna fail out real quick, right? And it's just the whole structure of it is just not set up that way. And while you were saying this, I'm waiting for someone to inspire me. Yeah, I picture a young lady saying that. No shade to young ladies, but there are areas in life, and I think STEM is the last. STEM in academia is the last kind of stronghold of reality gets to judge, right? Facts over feelings type stuff, right? And everywhere else, people can smuggle in all their, calculus just wasn't presented in my love language type stuff. Like that's not going to work over there. It's not going to work. It's not, nah. So, and there's something about men it's something about the disposition of men which is more amenable to just taking that beating from the environment. Not surprising, right? Men built for getting beat up by the environment. Seems right. I'm no evolutionary biologist, but it just seems right. So, and we'll see where all this girl coding thing ends up. Not to get into that, but it's an interesting thing to try when to try to force people into boxes that they don't want to go into. It's like, if people have deemed that, hey, psychologically, I don't want to be beaten up. Why should they be beaten up? Like, it was like, if we want to be generous now to the why are we trying to force people into STEM? Like, I don't get it. It's like, why do you want to do that kind of torture to yourself? Because it's very unforgiving. There's not a lot of room for interpretation. Why do we want to force people into it? I hope that STEM is really resilient enough not to get morphed. But by the way, when AI comes and the robots come, then we could just learn fake STEM, right? We could just start learning fake math, and because AI is going to be doing all the thinking and the robots are going to be doing all the working. I think that's probably where it's going to end up. But let's see.
All right. Let's see here.
The emotion that you wish you could let go of.
Love is the most powerful emotion in the world. We will all do everything for love. If there were more love in the world, the way we treat one another, the way we express our thoughts, you'll do anything for love, right? So love is by far my most powerful emotion. It's
including killing people.
Like, I love you.
Yeah, right. I just, okay, it depends on what love he's talking about. So he could be talking about eros. He could be talking about, I don't know, brotherly love. I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe he's talking about infatuation. Maybe he's talking about tunnel vision. Zealotry. I it's just, I don't know. The love talk thing, I think of it as more of an action word.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people get into this, you'll do anything for love. It's like, well, what is it that you're saying? I mean, I guess you'll do anything for love if you're thinking of it as a commitment. Okay, well then by definition, whatever you need to do to keep that commitment, that you'll do, because, okay, I guess that's the case, but that doesn't seem to be what he's saying.
No. And there's a question in the chat about, and this is something that comes up often, right? And we have talked about it, right here, but it's in between lines. And the question really, if I understand the question, is about, well, there are very high level people whom call people like Tony Robbins to guide them through, a particular critical situation. Yes, just like I said, that there are high level people for whom certain kinds of esoteric knowledge is appropriate, right?
Yep.
That self-knowledge and knowing just the right thing to tweak. Okay. If you do the kind of meditation that I do and believe and practice the kind of self-mastery that I kind of advocate, then yes, a little tweak about, if you blink your eye 3 times this way goes a long way.
Yeah.
But for the masses, no. So given that we're in a democracy, we like to think of things very in an egalitarian way. And then anything that's not egalitarian seems to kind of be tainted with some kind of a moral, that's immoral somehow. But that's all BS. We know here when we're talking about ideas, we know that people aren't equal. Okay. Very much so. Right. So yes, 100%. There are things to be learned. Very subtle shifts in your consciousness can make a huge difference. But not for the masses, bro. Not for 99.9% of people. They're not gonna. It's just gonna be. They just want the feel good stuff. It goes to the question I was asking Dr. Thunder about. Like, look, I could tell you exactly what's going on, how you receive information in your body, what the feelings are in your stomach, in your neck, the temperature, the hairs, the this, and then how to counter that, right? In the middle of a sales call, and then how that's gonna. But people don't even have that awareness, right? They're not there yet, okay? Or they'll never be there. They're not born for that. That's not them. So that point has been all the way through everything I'm saying. So when we're saying, and I believe Dr. Thunder, you're agreeing with this, when we say, all this hogwash about self-help, we're talking about the prepackaged self-help love language crap packaged for the masses, as though it was going to do anything for the masses. No, it's just going to be, they're just going to make them feel good and stuff. But for Tiger Woods or Mike Tyson, yes, a particular meditation type exercise or something like that will be the difference between winning or losing, or, making that extra free throw point, stuff like that. Yes, high performers always have a particular subtle method that they use, but that subtlety gets lost and completely diluted when it's delivered to the masses. And there's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
Then, like, when I just saw you, we didn't just hug for like 1 second.
Yeah.
And you do this better than I do.
I
but-
hold people. I make it uncomfortable because I just want to hug and love on people.
But it's not uncomfortable, bro.
Right.
Because the reason you're so successful is you truly do love people.
That's uncomfortable, bro. I don't know what he's talking about. He says it's not uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable, bro. I'm sorry.
People.
Yeah.
And you come from that place. And I know we're bigger dudes and like that's a beautiful expression of a man. A real man is capable of real love. That's a sign of real strength. So that's the most powerful one. And then for me, I know the emotion that I wish I didn't have. It's chaos.
Really? How often do you experience?
I don't know. Nobody's calling it emotion. Chaos is the emotion now.
That's the thing. He's not very neat with categories, by the way. And I'm doing a typology, a psychological typology on him already in terms of the kind of guy that he is. He's not a logic guy, but he's not TI as TE. It's all about some kind of action-based thing for him. It's not logic or the neatness of categories. So obviously he has done the thing I said he was going to do about talking about love now as though it was this kind of panacea, this just great, perfect, good thing, when he has already mentioned that people lovingly screw you up before. And now he's going to talk about this chaos, which I think it's a little interesting. I wonder what you think about it when he gets into this kind of chaos thing that he's. Let's grant him, yes, he's calling it an emotion. Let's get past that and then let him explain what he's talking about.
All right, we keep going.
Chaos,
Less
emotion.
because I'm aware of it, but I'm going to tell you all the time till about 5 years ago, even when we first met. Why? I used to even say this, man, I operate great under chaos. Man, you should see me operate under chaos. Most people can't handle chaos.
Right.
I'm calm under pressure. Well, the reason for that was I grew up in an alcoholic home. So I'm very familiar with chaos. It became a very familiar emotion. And what we do is we gravitate towards the familiar emotions in our life, even if they're not ones that serve us. And I don't think there's negative or positive emotions. I say this in the book. They're just
This might be why his father was telling him to be careful, by the way.
are.
Yes.
Fear isn't negative. Fear in abundance is negative. But some fear, being afraid to do this podcast, to some extent causes us to prepare. So a dose of it was given to us in the caveman days so T-Rex didn't eat us, right?
Sure.
Some fear is good. Some anxiety is okay. Some frustration, some anger is appropriate. It's to the dosage level. And we get these 4 or 5 of them. For me, some chaos is okay. It's fun. It's exciting. It's exhilarating, right? But getting it every day, every week, every month, all the time. And so how do you get rid of it? Well, one way you get rid of it is just being.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. The dosing thing, I think, is that's an interesting way to put that.
Yeah, and I think chaos. He's describing a chaotic mind state. Now, also in a chaotic environment, which tend to be one and the same thing, because when you walk into a chaotic room, chaotic bathroom with all kinds of crap, like it does feel like chaos in your head. You're like, what the hell is going on here, right? So that chaotic mind state of 10,000 things going on, and this guy is screaming, this one is wrong, blah blah blah, and maybe because he's an entrepreneur and very successful one, he thinks he thrives in chaos is one of the things that he's saying, but that it actually he thrived in spite of chaos, not because of chaos. He was maybe thinking that chaos is his thing. He rides the chaos wave, but it's like, dude, maybe you want to tone down the chaos a little bit. But at this point, because I want to ask you about that whole thing about we things are mostly caught, not taught, and we talked about the mimetic thing, and I said that we are all in some kind of mimetic dance with someone else. And this someone could be an imaginary person, right? Or it could be your imagination of what the Joneses are, right? But this is not something that I need a lot of evidence to kind of to make. Like this is we're so much like this. Like a lot of human behavior and the economy and the insatiableness of human wants might be a result of this, and hypergamy is kind of part of that too, in terms of when someone else has something, you want that plus one, and then the other person has to have that plus one. hence insatiability of human wants. Hence, the economy has to grow. Because I mean, if you just come from, if you're just growing up and you listen and you're like always hearing that the economy has to grow, it has to grow, don't you wonder like, well, why does it have to grow? Like, why does the economy have to constantly keep on growing? Well, it's because you want more than you had before.
Yep.
And also because we're technological beings, we create new things. And once I create this new red ball, now now I got to create a billion new red balls, because once one guy has it, other people want it. And here comes the advertisers showing the model with the red ball so that everybody can mimic the model. But anyways, all that to just make the obvious point that we copy. And I think it's very important to know which particular copying mode you're in. You may know the highest one, like the peak. You may be like, oh yeah, I'm at the peak is Jesus or something for you. And that's fine. But you need to know some intermediate ones as well. Okay. And for example, one of the mimetic rivalries I'm in, I recently identified, as I spotted and noted, is with my dad, in a sense, right? And again, it's not necessarily maybe the image of my dad, the notion of my dad, that kind of a thing, right? Doesn't necessarily. It's not like I'm out there competing with my dad, right? And it's not it's a divergent thing. It's like it's not. I'm not trying to be like him. I'm trying to be not like him, not because he's a bad person, but because we just have a different. We're just different, right? And he does things one way, and I try to do things the other way, or I try to perfect the doing of things the way he doesn't do it, or the way he does whatever, right? And I've kind of known vaguely that that's kind of part of the motivation thing, but right there on the mimetic stack somewhere is looming large. Somewhere is that my dad thing, right? Or that notion of my dad thing, or the type, that person, thing. For you, are there any, and you don't have to say which or what it is, but it could be in terms of your career, your life, your family life, or whatever it may be, somewhere in that whole hierarchy of models. What is it? And again, either positively or negatively, what are some of the models that you have, things you're trying to be or things you're not trying to be like, in whichever particular aspect, career-wise, family-wise,
Yeah.
life-wise?
So the first one I will say is my dad. That's definitely true. And that's an interesting way that you framed it. And perhaps this is because you've thought about this more than I've thought about this. But I'm like my dad in some ways, and I'm not like him in ways. Our careers are different. There's a lot of things that are different. We don't see eye to eye on politics. There's things that we agree with, some that I agree with him on, and things that I don't. He's not a Christian. I am. There's a bunch of things that are different, but there's like a core drive and just like commitment to his family, and in prioritizing the comfort of his family, and all of the things that he did that I strive to be. And I always say, if I'm half the dad that my dad was to me, then my son is lucky. Because it's incredible just where my dad came from, what he was able to do, what he's able to accomplish, and how much his kids and the lives of his grandkids are totally and completely different than his own life was, as a kid. So there is that. As far as musicians go, and one of them, which is at the top of the list for me, which also is sort of, he's a spiritual guru of sorts also, and I identify with his journey, his life's journey, and just the constantly reinventing himself. is John Coltrane, right? So John Coltrane, who he was a drug addict early in his career. He kicked the habit and replaced it with a profoundly deep spirituality. And he was back and forth between the Christian tradition and the Muslim tradition. We're not actually sure what he was when he passed away. He wrote a number of compositions that were clearly to, commemorating the sort of tradition that he grew up in, which was a Pentecostal kind of tradition. And when you listen closely to his music, especially late period Coltrane, you can hear the influence of these sort of emotional outbursts, in his music. You can hear that. You can sense it. A Love Supreme, for instance. So there's beauty there. So. But Coltrane practiced so much. He was practicing 12 hours a day, and he was reinventing himself, it seemed like, every day. He was taking in so much information and putting out so much material. It's just really incredible. And he died when he was pretty young, very young, younger than I am, right? And it's incredible what he was able to do in that period of time. So, and he was also a great band leader. He was a great band leader. He knew how to get exactly what it was that he wanted out of particular musicians, and he stuck with the same guys for as long as he could, right? So that's definitely, he's definitely a mentor. I'd say that I have sort of prototypes on different instruments. Hubert Laws in particular for flute, Eddie Daniels for clarinet, for saxophone it's Coltrane and Sonny Stitt. Those have been my two biggest influences. Of course, Charlie Parker is a big influence. As a composer, I like Klaus Ogerman. We talk about modern composers, Klaus Ogerman and Vince Mendoza. When you talk about, composer, arrangers, we could go for a long time. There's a lot of people that I have identified as having, being terrific representatives of a particular thing. And I have modeled aspects of my personality, my creativity, my talent, whatever. I have aimed that at different folks. If you talk about church, Saint Moses the Black, which is a 4th, 5th century saint. He was named after Moses, the one that we know. My son is named after Moses the Black, Saint Moses the Black, and Moses the Black is my patron saint. Right? There's a guy named Father Moses Berry, who was very influential to me as far as my conversion to Orthodox Christianity. And there's a number of writings that in his own conversion story, where he was the pastor of an AME church, African Methodist Episcopal, and he led a mass conversion into the Orthodoxy, where about an 800-member church came in. Everybody in the church came into Orthodox church, which is like, this is unheard of. And Moses Berry it's AME. He's a black guy. So there's something interesting there. I could go for a long time. Ravi Zacharias was very influential to me. William Lane Craig, there's a long list of G.K. Chesterton, Malcolm Muggeridge, Josh McDowell. There's lots of people, and this is the thing. This is the thing. You can't learn everything from one person. You can't. It's not you. I mean, because you're not that person. You're not that person, and even if you try to copy them exactly, it's still going to come out different. And there's so much information. There's so many resources. And I think it's so important for folks to, obviously just take full advantage of where we are in history right now. It's like there's so much stuff. It's like amazing. It's like you and I were talking about like a couple of podcasts. What was it, yesterday or something? And goodness. And, and I learned from folks that I'm in regular association with. I learned from you. I learned from Dr. Doug, and I learned from, I've got my show tomorrow night, Two Dads React. I learned from God Rules. That's it. That's his YouTube handle. I learned from, I try to put myself around people where I can learn. That whole not being the smartest one, not being the most developed one in the group is a big deal. If you're the head honcho, you need a new group. You want to be on the bottom. You want to barely make it into the group. You want to have to constantly be trying to prove yourself. So you could show them that that you are worth something, that you're of some sort of value to the group, right? Because you're the one that's going to have the most to gain in that scenario.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good thing that and that you have these models and that you know them. You can imagine why it's psychologically healthy to actually have, because a lot of people go through life. We've already established the fact that you're copying something, right? Like, no matter what, right? It's very, you're copying something, you're moving towards or moving against. And if you don't know what that is, it could lead you into some kind of crazy spiral. Because, by the way, this mimesis that this whole thing is based on forms culture, forms cohesion, but it can also become crazy. It's also responsible for like the madness of crowds, for example, whereby, things can escalate into a frenzy, and we just copy each other. Next thing we're all, we're doing things that we wouldn't do, but we're thinking, it's like this mirrors just amplify the light, if you will, and boom, there's a conflagration, an explosion. And there's a passage in the Bible. The many interesting things about this whole mimetic thing, by the way, many directions one can go, but the he without sin cast the first stone thing is like because once that first person throws that first stone, okay, all of a sudden the second stone might be a little hard to throw, the second person, but by the 10th stone, it's just gonna start flowing. Like, stones are just gonna start flowing on that lady's head because of copying, right? But because that first person, there's typically a first person that's very charged and ready to go, right? That starts this whole mimetic crazy, right? If you can get that person to not do the thing, then that it can quell that whole kind of this crazy copying that was about to happen. Now the reverse copying happens where the thing just reverses. So that was a brilliant kind of move there to he without first cast the first stone, to focus on that first stone, and that first guy didn't do it, because it's not like you don't have to tell everybody in the crowd, no, don't all throw stones. No, that's how it works. people are looking to other people. like, oh, he threw the stone. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to throw it, right? And then, as I said, by the 10th stone, people are not even thinking. It's just, oh yeah, now it's stone throwing time. Okay. And this is human beings we're talking about. Okay. And this is how the AI of human beings work. It is not very sophisticated. Okay. It is not very sophisticated at all. It is, he threw stone. I guess it's okay to throw stone. That's how we are.
Yeah. All right. We're getting close here.
Awareness. When you have an awareness of a thought, it loses its impact and power over you. It almost becomes like this. I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm doing the chaos thing again. Everything's great right now.
Yeah.
All the houses are paid off. My kids are happy. Married to a great woman. Got great friends. I'm doing the chaos thing again, aren't I? You dummy. You're doing it again. And it kind of loses its power over you. So I have a chapter in the book called One More Emotion and how to take an inventory of the emotions you have. And so, yeah, man, mine's definitely love, and the one I don't want is chaos. Because chaos causes me to act out of anger and frustration. It can depress me.
And your intentions are not going to be as, I guess.
It's pure. It's a gateway emotion. Chaos is my gateway emotion to the ones I don't want. Chaos gives me stress. Chaos gives me anger. Chaos gives me frustration. Chaos gives me fear. So it's a gateway emotion.
What is the result?
Is stress an emotion? I don't think stress is an emotion.
Yeah, you know, he's just, he ain't no, yeah. And he's actually referring to a book he wrote. So.
Right.
Result when you create from that space of chaos.
It's funny. I have found the ability to externally create something pretty productive.
Right.
But stay with me on this. But the process in getting there is destructive. The process in getting there is not beautiful. And I used to think that a lot of successful people
forcing your way to get the results.
almost through force.
Yeah.
You know? And I still do it sometimes. I'm thinking of a situation this week where I did it. And I used to think, well, that's a superpower though, because I've created all these external.
Look what I made.
Look what I did.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it because of that. The truth is I did it in spite of it.
You did.
And there's a lot of things in our lives that we have linked to our form.
Now that is a really good point. That is a really good point right there. And it's good to have the self-awareness, the introspection to dig that out. That idea that it's not the dysfunction that facilitated the breakthrough, the success. It was done despite the dysfunction. And look at how much easier it would have been, and how much less stress and how much less days off your life it would have taken if you would have done it without the dysfunction.
Yeah, that is a very good one. And a lot of times people, now we don't really, I don't know Steve Jobs, but the myth of Steve Jobs focuses on that. Oh, he was crazy and he threw computers out of windows and he blah blah, and like that was part of the genius. We like to tell that story a lot, right? We like that. Oh, the dysfunction. Oh my God, it was it was the heroin, it was the whatever it was in some crazy thing. That was the juice, right? And it's like, well, no, maybe not. Probably if you ask Steve Jobs, it's like, yeah, I tried not to do that most of the time. Yes, it did slip out. That was not, the thing that really got me there. As a matter of fact, it was when I was more calm that I made my best decisions, blah, blah, blah. But we like that. We like drama, right? So that story gets propagated. But yes, definitely from the first person perspective, being introspective enough to know that, hey, even if I've attained such and such success, my foibles and my little weird tics that I may have and some little, my irritability, let's say, is not really it's not the necessary ingredient for success here. I need to find a way to deal with that, and I'm still going to be successful, Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you very much to, let's see here. I'm not going to use your name. RS are the initials for that $5 Cash App. Very much appreciated. Saying for pro-black male content. That is right. Here, let's keep going.
Formula, our recipe of success that we hold on to, that you've done in spite of those things, not because of those things. If you don't have self-confidence, here's what you have. You have a really bad reputation with yourself.
Yes.
You have built a habit of not keeping the promises you make to yourself. We've all heard this before, but there's a level. I have a chapter in the book called One More Standard. Here's how I built what I would call almost superhuman confidence in spite of my insecurity. Think about that.
All right. Let's go over here. So you have some final thoughts for us?
This has been you see, when you go to the internal space like this, how to internally work with yourself, how to be introspective. I think the main thing here is when you're ready, right? When the environment has caused you to take steps towards particular directions, you should always, rather than just purely look out, also look inside to try to collect certain artifacts. And you may not be as precise, just like our friend here calling everything an emotion, right? And all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter how precise you are, but you need to know and you figure out the furniture of your soul, right? And the ones that work, the ones that doesn't work, the one you keep stumbling on, the one that you need to clear out of the way, the things that work for you in a certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways of coming to generalizations about things that work for everybody. And in order to do that, there has to be more precision in the way you introspect, right? But ultimately, it's about having a good relationship with yourself, not in some kind of self-care, airy-fairy nonsense, right? I'm talking about knowing yourself, right? And being able to, even in pain, especially in the painful, awkward ways. I always talk about, actually, it was Ayn Rand, one of Ayn Rand's lines. She talks about the dark, unventilated corners of the soul, right? That you need to peer into, right? And you listen out there, the dark, unventilated corners of your soul that you haven't checked out, right? These dark alleys that you keep on avoiding, okay? You got to go in there, whatever it means, they come in forms of insecurities that may be tied to particular memories, particular aspects of yourself that you feel less than. Oh, I'm not, I wasn't rich enough. I'm not white enough. I don't know, whatever it is that's bugging you out there. You need to be able to pick up that thing and look at it, like just really just stare at it and become familiar with it, make friends with it. Okay. And therefore, you're not going to run into a lot of these roadblocks. Now, I didn't do a summary of what was said. I kind of just took a different tact here into the whole know thyself, look into all these corners, try to create some handles, as I'm saying, some furniture, whatever. It doesn't have to be precise. He's over here talking about chaos being an emotion and he's recognizing it. Okay. You also should have words that identify things within. Okay. You don't have to be Carl Jung. Okay. You don't have to get the whole map of the human psyche down and nailed. But if you don't introspect, you're definitely not going to be, quote unquote, close to all you can be. Those are my final thoughts.
Yes. And to add to that, I'll just add that whole knowing yourself, loving yourself, self-love, self-care. The only way that any of that stuff means anything at all is it's in that context, that sort of Petersonian context of the past you, the present you, and the future you. That's where the rubber touches the road on if you actually are showing yourself respect, treating yourself well, valuing yourself, being good to yourself, caring about yourself, loving yourself, respecting yourself, self-care, all of that stuff. The rubber touches the road on that whole past you, current you, future you, that treating yourself, this relationship with you that we're talking about, treating yourself with respect means that you know that whatever actions you take now, the future you will be saddled with the consequences or the benefits of whatever that action was. So if you over prioritize the moment, you are, it seems maybe like you are, you're feeling good, but that's not really loving yourself, right? That's doing damage to yourself because of what it does to the future you, right? And whatever you have now is because of the past you. Whatever you have or that you don't have is because of the past you. And you're either actual affinity, love, respect for yourself, or the lack of love, respect, for yourself. That's the only way that stuff actually matters. Anything else is just atmospheric BS. We have a show on Sunday. Case closed, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be on my channel. And we'll have a all-star panel and a trending topic. Really, really looking forward to it. It's good to see you in here, 3000 GT. And Josh and Bob and everybody else in the chat. Thanks for being here. Remember to come back tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Two Dads React, where we'll be talking a great deal about what to expect in 2023. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on and a lot of crazy predictions that banks are making that are even more wild than many of the predictions that who have been labeled conspiracy theorists and fear mongers. But the banks are actually saying some stuff that's way worse than stuff that we were even suggesting, or anybody was actually suggesting. So that's going to be a good show.
Good
so
times.
Please come back for that, and then of course tomorrow morning have another Car Thunder, and make sure you go on over to Ike's channel, subscribe to his channel. And Ike has been doing daily content. He's on that daily grind. He's on that daily grind. So make sure you check out his content. It's very introspective, very and very topical. He's been dealing with an aspect. Well, actually, why don't you say a little bit about a few of the last topics that you covered, so people can kind of get a flavor.
Yeah. So recently, you've been looking at a lot of things that are happening geopolitically and economically. And economically, by that I mean in the world of technology and finance and such. So take, for example, I made a video about making the Star Trek replicator. Star Trek replicator is probably one of the most loved or famous sci-fi technologies, probably right next to the lightsaber, right? But where basically you want a steak and you just say, yeah, give me a steak, and a steak appears. Basically, we're one step closer to that in terms of being able to cut off the whole supply chain of how a steak gets made, right? That's one example, okay? So things in that front, on the technology front, on the economy front, on the geopolitical stuff, right? President Biden, for example, promising $55 billion to African nations. Should the African leaders have gone there? Is it just a way of placating China? Are they going to be serious? Will the $55 billion actually materialize? After all, Congress has to approve of this. We know that the presidents can't just give money. And then there's an aspect of it that has to do with the IMF And we know that the IMF is a way of trapping you, because they give you money and the money comes with terms, and those terms tend to be detrimental to your development if you are indeed a third world country. So things like that, also including more practical aspects, such as, for example, today I did a restream of talking about upward mobility, business opportunities, government contracts, right? So being better, doing better, and knowing thyself. Come check it out.
Yeah, it's interesting on that point about Biden saying he's going to give 55 million to Africa, nations in Africa. It's amazing the lengths that they'll go to avoid reparations for Black Americans. We'll give Africans money, but we ain't giving you Black Americans nothing.
Yeah, that one came up a few times in the comments, in the comment section.
Oh my goodness, it's breathtaking, man! It's freaking amazing. First, the freaking Ukraine stuff and all of the money that just magically appeared, and then now we gonna give Africans money, but we ain't giving you.
Yeah,
you.
and I recently just also covered Zelensky's speech, right? So the amount now is about 21.9 billion, almost 22 billion, which is rather unprecedented in terms of support to Ukraine, and giving them some artillery that we typically don't. Some system, I think it's called the Patriot system or something like that, to try to counter Russia's artillery superiority in the war. So yeah, 21 billion to Ukraine so far. I don't know when Russia's going to come to the table, but we probably could expect another 21 billion before this is all said and done.
Plus a 55 billion. And supposedly there was no money. Oh, we ain't got no money for you brothers. We don't have we have no money for reparations. We need to be responsible rulers. We can't, President, our administration, you can't just be prioritizing the issues of Black Americans. We don't have any money. We don't have any money. Oh, I guess we do have money. And we have a lot of money. And we could have given it to you, but you weren't really.
That's an interesting study. As a matter of fact, I might do a follow-up video to that, and not that because that I kept seeing it come up, in the comments over and over again, like, hey, reparations, with regards to the 55 billion here. And an interesting study would be like, well, when does the money magically appear? In other words, what are the priorities? In the case of Africa and that promise, and again, the money might never materialize. It really is a China thing, right? It's really not about Africa. It's a China thing. So it's like, so there's that kind of and then with Ukraine, it's a Russia thing. I'm not saying that. So it's like, again, with the environment and the incentives, right? What causes people to actually do what you want them to do? Maybe you guys, maybe you guys need nuclear weapons.
Oh goodness gracious!
It seems to be the main motivating thing here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you later. Thank you again, everybody, for coming through. And super thanks. Remember, super thanks for the replay gang. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. And that is our time. Peace out.